When you're working in Photoshop, one of the things you want to be sure to do is check that you have the correct layer selected. In other words, the layer that contains the objects that you want to impact with whatever you're doing, whether you're making an adjustment, moving something, transforming something, or even deleting something. You need to be on the right layer. Usually, you'll select the layer manually by going to the Layers panel and scrolling until you see the layer that contains the object that you want to impact. For example, I'd like to remove this bottle from the scene, and I remember it's on its own layer, so I can do that without directly affecting anything else in the image. So I'll come to the Layers panel, and I'll scroll until I find the layer that I labeled bottle. And please do label your layers. It only takes a moment to name a layer. Just double-click on the current layer name to open a text editing window on the layer. Type a layer name that's meaningful to you, then click to the right of the layer name to close the editing area. I've got my bottle layer selected now. And now if I press delete on my keyboard, that's backspace on a Windows keyboard, the bottle layer disappears and the bottle disappears from my image. Of course, sometimes we don't even notice what layer is selected. For example, now my shell layer is selected, and if I had even more layers than I do now, or if the shell layer inside of a group, I may not notice that it's selected, and somewhere in my work, I might press delete or backspace again, and the contents of the shell layer would be missing from the file. So what do you do if that happens to you? Well, the first answer is that undo is your friend. Don't forget that you have multiple undos in Photoshop. You can undo either from a menu, or I prefer using a shortcut. The shortcut for undo is Command-Z on Mac or Control-Z on Windows. The menu command is up here in the Edit menu, where it will tell you exactly what you're going to undo. So if I choose undo, that will undo the deletion of the layer. And that's good because that will bring my shell back into view. Here's the shortcut for undo. There's also a redo command, and here's the shortcut for that. So Command-Z, Control-Z on Windows, or undo delete layer brings my shell back into view. And there are other things you can do too. For example, you can take advantage of the auto select feature, especially if you want to move something in Photoshop. So let's say that I want to move this starfish. If I look at the layers panel, I see that I have two layers, one named starfish and one starfish copy, and I don't remember which is which. I can let Photoshop help me with that by making sure the move tool is selected. You can see in the options bar for this tool that auto select layer is on by default. And so when I click on this starfish, Photoshop automatically selects whichever starfish layer contains that particular starfish. And when I drag, that's the starfish that moves, not the one down here. And that's what I wanted. So that's just a heads up to keep your eye on the layers panel and make sure you always have the right layer selected. And a couple things you can do to avoid selecting the wrong layer or to fix things if you do happen to affect the wrong layer.